Thanks to the powerful TruePic X processor and state-of-the-art imaging technologies, the OM system OM-1 is able to offer two fundamentally different high-resolution modes. With those, we can finally exploit the full potential of our high-end Micro Four Thirds optics to capture detailed images with unprecedented fidelity. From landscape to portrait photography, the creative and technical possibilities are almost endless. My name is Thomas Eisl. I'm a professional photographer from Vienna, Austria. In this expert guide, I will illustrate all technical intricacies of high-res shot and explain when to use it in practice and how to deal with difficult shooting situations. Let's get started. It is about time to crank the image quality up a notch. The high-res shot function brings 5 main image quality benefits. First, it increases the OM-1's resolution to up to 80 megapixels total. Second, the sharpness and clarity are improved. Third, the color fidelity is improved. Fourth, the resulting images will have significantly less noise. And last but not least, the high-fidelity dynamic range is expanded by about 1 stop in the shadows. When in tripod high-res shot mode, the OM-1 shifts the sensor in small increments to capture a total of 8 images, utilizing the electronic shutter. These images are then composited in camera to create a file with 10,368 by 7,776 pixels. This equates to about 80 megapixels in total. The selectable ISO range is limited from ISO 80 to ISO 1600. Also, the image stabilization is automatically turned off. In tripod mode, flash photography is possible. More on that later. The overall image composition in this mode is very fast, allowing for an efficient workflow. Tripod high-res shot requires a stable platform and a still subject. Subject movement results in artifacts, blur, or a failure to create a composite. Keep this in mind as a rule of thumb. Later in the video, I will show you how to bend the rule and deal with subject movement. However, one rule that you cannot bend or break when using tripod mode is the need for an absolutely still camera. Use a high-quality tripod, set a self-timer, or ideally use the OM system RMWR1 remote trigger. When it comes to ISO settings, the best detail resolution is achieved at ISO 80. From then on, a gradual decrease is observable. Handheld high-res shot is a computational mode that makes use of frame-to-frame micro variations. The OM-1 captures 12 images with electronic shutter and combines them in camera to create a file with 8,160 by 6,120 pixels, so about 50 megapixels in total. All ISO settings can be used in this mode, and the image stabilization is set to auto. Flash photography is not possible in handheld high-res mode. Compared to tripod mode, the composition takes longer. As you just saw, handheld mode, despite its name, can also be used when the OM-1 is on a tripod. If you handhold the camera instead, keep it as steady as possible. When shooting longer exposure times, you should definitely enable handheld assist. Probably the most important difference between handheld mode and tripod mode is that it can compensate for micro movements of subjects. Here are a few images of my sleeping cat to illustrate that. These would not be possible with tripod high-res shot. The breathing and slight movements of Mrs. Kitty would have ruined the image. These images did not only demonstrate that handheld mode can deal with limited subject movement, but also that insanely high ISO numbers can be used and still the result will be good. If you want the highest fidelity, however, you should set the sensitivity somewhere from ISO 200 to ISO 1600. High-res shot gives you access to a multitude of image file options. Regarding image file type, you can select to record a JPEG only or RAW plus JPEG. I highly recommend using the latter option. Then you not only get a high-resolution JPEG, but also a high-resolution RAW file ending with .orf. And on top of that, a regular standard resolution RAW file ending with .ori as a fallback option. There are also 3 different resolution options available: 25, 50 and 80 megapixels. The latter is only available in tripod mode, obviously. These resolution settings only apply to the JPEG file. The RAW file will always be saved at maximum resolution. An excellent feature I want to point out before we move on is that if the camera is unable to record a composite image for one reason or another, the first shot will be recorded nonetheless. If JPEG is selected, the shot will be recorded in JPEG format, while if RAW plus JPEG is selected, the camera will record one RAW and one JPEG. So no matter what happens, you will always have at least one usable photograph of the scene. Now that we've covered the basics of high-res shot, it is time to get into the details. High-res photography really pushes the optical limits of any lens. In order to get the best results, I recommend using high-quality optics. When it comes to in-lens image stabilization, you have to be aware of the following configurations. When the camera is on a tripod, turn the optical image stabilization off. This is applicable for both modes. When the camera is used handheld, so obviously in handheld high-res shot mode, the lens stabilization can be turned on. You should do so when working with long focal lengths. If you turn on any in-lens stabilization, the OM-1 will automatically disable the in-body image stabilization, even though it will still display SIS Auto in the Super Control panel. So you can either use the in-body or in-lens stabilization, not both. When using high-res shot, the highlights clip earlier. At ISO 200, parts of the image which meter above +3 EV do not contain sufficient tonality and details. Flickering light sources, meaning fluorescent or LED lamps, impact image quality negatively. So if no alternative light sources are available, use shutter speeds of 1/30th or slower to mitigate the effect. By examining the live view, it is pretty easy to tell whether you are dealing with a flickering light source or not. So right now you can see that the screen is flickering a bit, so we are dealing with a flickering light source. Let's adjust the shutter speed. Alright, it's already at 1/15th of a second, so let's go down to 1/5 or something like that, just to make sure. In order to spot flickering light sources through the viewfinder, you have to leave the flicker reduction to off. Otherwise the camera won't show you that there is a problem. Knowing the total exposure time can be handy to judge whether to use high-res shot or the standard photography mode of the OM-1. The calculation is pretty easy. In tripod mode, multiply the shutter speed by 8. In handheld mode by 12. However, regardless of result, you have to know that for all practical purposes, you should always assume 1/60th as being the fastest shutter speed possible. Previously, I said movement in the frame should be avoided when using high-res shot. This is true, but I also said that this rule can be bent a little. So if movement in the frame is unavoidable, you have two feasible options. Option number 1, attempt to freeze the motion. Use handheld high-res shot and set the shutter speed of at least 1/1000th of a second. This equates to about 1/60th in total. Keep in mind that it does not get any faster than that. That's why there is also an option number 2, which is incorporate motion blur. Use one of the two high-res shot modes and set a slow shutter speed. Then pick a setting that either results in natural blur or that is long enough to eliminate the moving object from the frame altogether. Straight to the point. Strobes plus high-res shot equals extraordinary image quality. There are just 3 things you have to consider to capitalize on that. First, only tripod high-res shot can be used. Second, the maximum flash synchronization speed is 1/100th of a second. And third, the flash output has to be set manually. Compatible micro 4/3 flash units will communicate their readiness to the camera and automatically synchronize with the sensor shift. If you use a generic flash, an appropriate charge time has to be set. Here is how you set the charge time when using a third-party flash. Go to Menu, pick the second camera menu, then Menu 1 Computational Mode. Select high-res shot. The last item in the menu is charge time. There you can pick an appropriate charge time depending on the flash unit you are using. Due to its reliability and ease of use, handheld high-res shot is viable for general photography. One area of application that is often overlooked is low-light photography. Instead of using a low ISO, slow shutter speed combination to photograph a still subject in low light, I recommend using handheld high-res shot instead. It delivers higher fidelity, more sharpness and better details. tripod high-res shot gives you the absolute maximum image quality the OM-1 is capable of capturing. A professional, precise workflow is paramount to achieve best results. I highly recommend tripod high-res shot for the reproduction of artworks, scientific photography, product and still life photography, architectural photography both indoors and outdoors, and of course landscape photography. Tripod high-res shot combined with a high-end macro lens is also great for digitizing negative and positive film. Thanks to the quite astounding computing power of the OM-1, handheld high-res mode can be used for portrait photography as well. With a little bit of practice, you can either resolve every small detail of your subject, or you can produce unique film-like images with rich tonality. A few basics up front. First, you should set a shutter speed of 1/500th or faster. This equates to about 1/40th of a second in total. Most people can hold still for this amount of time. Advise your model not to blink or move during the exposure, just to be on the safe side. For more consistent results, mount the OM-1 on a tripod. If mobility is required, a monopod is a practical compromise. So, those were the basics. Now, here comes the expert knowledge. The following images were edited and color graded in OM workspace only. The skin of the model was not retouched. So the first image was captured at ISO 1600 and you are looking at the standard resolution file right here at 200%. There is still a lot of detail and the OM-1 really has good noise performance, I'd say. But the difference you see now is quite staggering. This is the high-res file of the same shot, and the amount of detail and overall sharpness and resolution is very close to what you get from digital medium format. If we zoom out a bit, we can see that every strand of hair is sharply depicted in the image. There is no blur, no nothing. Quite incredible, I'd say. So a zoom in to the eyeball shows the difference between the standard file and the high-res file. The difference in detail is quite drastic. The next shot was captured at ISO 6400. Again, let's start with the standard resolution file. It is again perfectly usable and there is enough detail, I'd say. But if we compare it to the handheld high-res shot, we see quite a drastic difference. Here is the standard file and this is the handheld high-res file. Also note the improved color fidelity on her skin. So handheld high-res is really worth it. I captured this shot with around 1/100th of a second, and actually I shouldn't have done that because here in the hair you can see that there is slight motion blur. That's why you should always use the 1/500th of a second shutter speed I recommended earlier. In any case, the portrait is fine and I really like it. So last but not least, I'm gonna show you an image captured at ISO 25600. This is the standard mode and I'd say it is still usable, and I've shot the OM-1 at ISO 25600 in commercial scenarios in the past, and I got the shot and the client was happy and everything, but really there is of course a loss of detail. But if we compare it to the high-res shot, we can see not only that the detail did improve, but mostly the skin color improved drastically. So the fidelity we now get is quite incredible. And at the beginning of this chapter I mentioned that you can use handheld high-res shot to create a unique film-like look, and here is exactly how you do it. Set the OM-1 to a high ISO number like 25600, and then you will get this very special look. When you are used to 35mm film photography, you probably have seen that as well. So we have very fine tonality, but we don't have this overly digital, high fidelity crisp look. So it is a very interesting mixture between sharpness and resolution, but not too much of either of those. What I really appreciate about the high-res shot is that it took the color grading very well. And really, detail and sharpness is cool, but what really breaks a shot is when the colors are off. So this is the regular shot at 25600, just one more time, and this is the high-res shot. The fidelity is really great, and I recommend trying that out to get this very special film-like look. It's very flattering for portraits and very usable in practice. The two high-res shot modes of the OM system OM-1 are truly spectacular. Most importantly, they are not gimmicks, but professional features for demanding photographers. By utilizing high-res shot, you will get image quality yet unheard of in the Micro Four Thirds world, greatly pushing the boundaries of what is possible. I'm hyped, and you should be as well. Thank you very much for watching. Please consider subscribing and following me on other social media. See you next time.